Welcome everyone to a new update, and today we'll be covering everything you need to know about the current price action of Bitcoin as we are approaching a very decisive period, and we're going to cover that, and it's going to give a ton of volatility. No live stream today, but we're going back with the Monday and Thursday live streams at 7 p.m. So no morning live streams anymore. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel and like this YouTube update if you enjoy the content. If you also like what we do, we also have a trade letter with the latest altcoin setups, market information and market analysis. You can try it for free for 1 week. The link can be found in the description beneath. The same goes for the premium membership. Within this premium membership you can see all my personal trades, you can see more trade IDs and way more. It can be tested for 1 week for free as well. In this update, we'll be covering the recent price action of Bitcoin, but we're also going to dive into the macroeconomic events for the upcoming weeks, and we'll be jumping into the strength of the dollar and the weakness of the euro as we saw a new low today. In yesterday's update, we have been covering the topic regarding the policy towards the Fed, and we have been discussing the results from the jobless claims and the unemployment rates. Those came out way more positive than expected. However, it was mostly the jobless claims that came out way more positive, and the unemployment rate wasn't great at all. We saw a result of that with 3.7%. Second, another important point came out on Friday, which was the factory order data, which was way worse than anticipated, and this dropped by 1%, which is the worst result since April 2020, and that was actually kickoff of the COVID pandemic and the economic response. What's next for the coming weeks? We are going to dive first in this current week, as it might look like we are not having that much of important events showing up, but it actually includes a lot. The first important one is today, as we can see that the ISM services PMI is happening and could be a trigger for markets to reverse, and then I mean the dollar specifically. Second, we got the Ethereum merge taking place this month, and the first part will be starting today, and that's also a key trigger for the crypto markets, as the markets are going to react heavily on this due to the fact that it's one of the most important events in the existence of blockchain and crypto. If we go further in the line, we can see that Thursday is another giant day. On Thursday, we'll be getting the jobless claims again, which are less important, but we'll also be getting unemployment claims and the ECB rate decisions for the interest rate policy, which can have a direct impact on the Euro-USD correlation or price action, which ultimately has a direct response to the markets of crypto and risk on too. As a dessert, we are also going to get a speech from the Fed, as Jerome Powell will be speaking. This is all going to be very decisive for the markets. And finally, which is not this week but next week, we got an event on the 13th, which is the CPI data, which is coming out and is a key decider for the Fed. What are we going to expect from the markets from here? Well, September is going to be important. The markets have been going into a downtrend substantially since May 2021, but also risk on assets have been falling heavily, as the Nasdaq is still down 28% since November 2021, which is less than 10 months. September is usually a bad month, as the past 5 years crypto hasn't been doing well, resulting into red numbers. Ultimately, the previous years, crypto has been completely different, or the ecosystem has been different, and the markets have been, and we've not had an energy crisis, falling markets in the summer, inflation peaking, and this policy from the Fed. Does this mean that the markets are going to fall more? It doesn't really have to. With all the events happening currently, the long-resting run on the dollar and the weakening economy, as the first real numbers are coming in and are worse than expected, we could be expecting an outcome of the markets which the mass isn't expecting to happen at all. In that case, as everything is so heavily oversold and sentiment is on the ground, we could be getting a reversal on the policy of the Fed sooner than later, resulting into the end of a recession possibly, and a potential reversal on all markets. Let's get towards the markets and let's dive into the potential scenarios and the charts. when we are discussing the markets, we are getting to the same conclusions as we have been doing in the previous updates, which were regarding the dollar, which were regarding Bitcoin as a whole. So let's dive into the dollar first and why it's important to keep an eye on those. And then we're going to dive into Bitcoin for a short update as we are looking at scenarios. First of all, the dollar has been going into an uptrend since actually January 2021, but mostly since May 2021. And that is the actual moment that we have been seeing a top taking place on Bitcoin. If we go towards the previous times, we started to see a run since January 2018 on the dollar too, and we know that the markets have been peaking with crypto then too. Same goes for the period that we have here. But as we are looking at the markets for the dollar, we can see that the trend is substantial. We are up 23% at this point, or even more. Let's see. We're up 23%, which has been influencing the euro dollar, which has been crashing significantly. And right now we're on the edge of a decisive point, as we could be getting those bullish divergences on the euro dollar pair here, influenced by probably all the events that are going to take place during the coming week, which we discussed. Now, if we're looking at this trend, it is not a great moment to start swapping at this point, right? So people are deciding whether or not they have to sell the euros or whether they have to sell the USD. Right now, USD is ultimately quite strong. So swapping your euro towards USD doesn't make such much sense, as you should have been doing that way earlier. It goes the same as with altcoins and crypto. And when such a trend is happening, you should actually be discussing with yourself whether you want to swap USD towards euro relatively soon instead of the other way around. When we're looking at the dollar, especially when we're looking at the weekly time frame, coming weeks are going to be decisive, in a sense that if we are going to be decisive, we will be getting a bearish divergence resulting into a downtrend here and resulting into a reaction to the downside for the dollar, and therefore risk on assets are going to do well. When we're going towards the yields, Labor Day, so they'll be probably kicking in tomorrow. We see a substantial trend here too, but if the coming data is going to be worse than expected, or if Powell is going to be more dovish going towards the future, especially since potentially oil is going to drop, or when other assets are going to drop. Oil is still consolidating at this point, but it's in a downtrend. If you're looking at the yields, you probably see a top happening here and a reversal taking place. So the moment that this one is going to fall, it is a first trigger that investors are assuming that the Fed can't keep up with the policy, and then the dollar is going to have a reversal relatively soon too, and that ultimately leads towards more money towards risk on assets. Looking at the weekly time frame, this is still unchanged. 19K is still the area that we have to watch. Actually, it's this entire block plus the previous all-time high of 2017. If that is going to sustain here, the ultimate scenario is that we drop beneath the low, take the liquidity there, and then reverse, and this bounce back up is the actual trigger. Question though is whether we're going to get this, as these areas are probably going to be stacked with orders. This area around 12 to 13K are even more stacked with orders. So if you want to get into longs, probably it's wise to start building those longs in this range already, because if we really start to conclude what the price action means at this point, we can have a few key triggers on the lower time frames that we are watching. So for instance, if this is the current resistance zone that we have to crack to, or we can make it different and this is the current resistance zone, we could argue that this is just a fake out beneath those levels here. So in that case, we could be saying, hey, since this breakout here, we've started a range that we are building, in which we also had a fake out on the upside, and we also could be having a fake out on the downside here, which means that if we break up and flip the area of 20.5, that is also a trigger that we're going to get towards the highs again. So it's quite unsure whether or not we're going to get the obvious scenario, which is a fall, a reclaim, and that is a trigger. I think that the odds of building your longs here already couldn't be worse, especially if you keep your liquidity on the side, in which you are able to buy the reclaim or to dip into lows again. And right now we can actually see that altcoins are already breaking out, as Litecoin, EOS, Ripple has been showing strength. So in this case, the scenario still stands. This is the most obvious one, but building your longs here isn't a bad case to do so. And then second, if we clearly break and flip 21.6, the trigger towards 28k is definitely on the cards. So let's get towards the conclusion of this update. Thank you for watching to this update, and hopefully you have been informed with everything that's going to come and why it's important to keep an eye on today, Thursday and the 13th. We are going to get a ton of volatility as the markets are squeezing and accumulating sideways. So be ready, and also be ready for different views than what the mass is saying at this point, as usually the mass is wrong with their perspectives. If you enjoy the content, make sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel, like the YouTube update, and also be sure to be there on Thursday at 7 p.m. as we are adjusting the live stream times. Also, if you enjoy the content, check out the trade letter in the description beneath, which you can check out for 1 week for free, and the premium membership as well. And I'll see you again tomorrow at a new update. Ciao!